Welcome to the studio review for Chapter 5 on Classes Part 2. We're going to continue this restaurant menu project where you are designing your classes, and previously you had come up with fields you thought you needed and constructor and getters and setters. And now you're going to handle some of the behavior of the classes. So they talk here about how you're going to have some instance methods. How are you going to add and remove menu items from the method? How do you tell if a menu item is new? And tell when the menu itself was last updated. You need a way to print out a single menu item, print out the entire menu, and a way to determine whether or not two menu items are equal. So we're going to be able to write some instance methods for some of these. We'll be able to override the toString and equals methods to accomplish all of this. So again, you don't want to do any coding until you've actually made some notes and kind of thought about how you want to structure everything. Think about the names of the methods, the access levels, what types of input and return values and their types. And whether something should be a static method versus a instance method. So you need to kind of go through that process. And if you haven't done that yet, go ahead and, stop the video now and do that. And then, come back when you are ready for me to kind of show you what I came up with, which might be different from you, and that's totally okay. But I will demonstrate for you what I did and why I did it. Okay, so here's what I came up with. You remember from before, the Chapter 4 version of this, I just had my fields, my constructors, and my getters and setters. So now I've thought through, if I want to override a special method, if I want to have a way to print the menu, then overriding the toString method is the best way to do that. If I want to be able to add items and remove items from the menu, I need to have, those in here. And as far as being able to see when something was last updated, really, I can just have a setter, a getter or a setter for that, which I actually did not add on here, but it's something we could certainly put in. But this will definitely update, that's an important piece of this is every time we add something or remove something, we want to update that date up here in the last updated field. And the other thing is the menu item class. For each individual item, we want to be able to print information about that item in a custom way. So we'll override the toString method and also override equals in order to be able to tell, with our own criteria, is this a duplicate of a previous thing that was added, not just based on location and memory, but actually based on the content, the name of the menu item, or potentially some other thing like its category. Maybe there's some multiple things that we might want to do, base our comparison on. The instance method that would be important here is being able to tell if something is new or not, and that can just this doesn't say Boolean, but it should. It's a Boolean that will actually return true or false based on looking at the date that was added up here and saying, is that, and I'm going to say for my purposes, I'm going to call it 90 days. If it's been on the menu for 90 days, it's no longer new, but anything less than that, we would consider it new. So that's how we'll kind of define this. So now that I've kind of mapped out how this is going to work based on what I had structured from before, it's time to code. So I'm going to come over here to my menu item to start. And you remember, we've got these fields, name, description, price, and category, and then also the date added that gets instantiated, it gets initialized to today's date whenever the constructor is run, which is when you create a menu item for the first time. So you pass in the other 4 pieces of information, and then this one just gets initialized with local date.now. So we have our getters and setters. So here's where we need to do a little bit of work. For one thing, this method is new. We could go ahead and write this just to tell if something was added within the last 90 days. Now, in order to do this, there's going to be some another class we're going to need to use that is in conjunction with local date. chrono unit, which will allow us to define how it can calculate how many days it has been between one day and another day. So let's go ahead and write this. I'm going to have Boolean is new. And I'll just say, local date today equals local date not now. So we have a baseline. Whenever we run this, we need to know what the date is right this second. So that'll be today. Okay, now we need to find out how many days it is between today's date and the date that this menu item was first created. So I'm going to say double and call it days between. So we'll get the number of days. And I'll say get date added and say until, and then start with today, and the basis on which you want to measure is the chrono unit. So this is where we go to java.time.temporal packages, and I'm going to tab over there to make sure the import statement is there, and then just say days. So now we're saying we want to count the number of days. So that's what that'll do for us. And then once we have those days between, we can just return, is the number of days between less than 90? Is that true or is that false? And that's going to be the return value of this is new instance method. Okay, so we can, write all this stuff all day long, but we really need to have a way to test this stuff, right? This is where we need to go over to our main, and we need to actually start creating some objects and, testing some of these methods. So we could create some items, menu items here, and you can take your time and do this however you would like. I'm going to actually paste these in to save a little bit of time here. So pause it if you need to. But I've created 5 menu items here, each, as a new menu item, a new instance of the menu item class, and given them a name, description, price, and category. So every single one has different, and clearly I've gone like St. Louis Italian here with my toasted ravioli and things like that. So I have a variety of, categories, a variety of titles and descriptions. And so let's just, before we print anything, let's just test our is new and say, print, that's not what I meant to do. Print line, there we go. And we'll say, item 1 dot is new. And just see if we get true or false. So I'm going to run this, and I need to actually run it from here first. Looks like it needs to build, so I'll have to give it a second. So we see true right there. So it's true. Now, I'm never going to be able to get a false out of this as long as we're not working with a database, and I might have something that was added, several days ago or months ago or whatever. So to approximate or to, kind of have a way to test whether this is working or not, we can actually change this and have a second line just for testing. So I'm just going to say, test is new to be false. And I'll just say, something like this dot date added is local date, and we can use this parse method of the local date class to give it a different date. So I'm going to go way back and say like 2022, June 12th or something. And then it will actually give it that date. So that's way more than 90 days, right? So we should now, when we run it again, find that it comes back false. And there it is, it's false. So it's working, it's calculating, 90 days, not 90 days. So that's all we need. I'm going to change these back now to where it'll assign today's date. But that's good enough just to be able to test and make sure that our instance method is working the way we expect it to. Okay, great. So we want to print, and if you don't remember this from lecture, if you print an item, so we can print item 1, here's what happens. You get this weird little thing that basically says it's a menu item object, and this is its memory location, its location in memory. So clearly the built-in toString method of this class is not friendly. What we want to do is be able to have a nice way to present that information. So this is where we're going to actually go over and do, what we plan to do here, which is to customize this toString method and provide something, much nicer to read. So apologies, let me go back over here. Okay, so let's go over to menu item again, and we'll come down here. Below the getters and setters, I've got the special methods section right here. All right, so we want to customize this to format the name, description, price, and the conditional new, whether it's new or not. So let's start by making sure we use this override annotation. And then we'll say public string, or returning a string, toString. And then I'm going to start by, we can return a concatenation of all this information formatted, but it would be nice to be able to tell whether the new text should be added or not. It needs to be conditional. So before I return the final concatenation, I'm going to do that. I'm going to say string new text, and it's going to be, I'm going to use a ternary expression. So I'm going to say is new. So we'll call our instance method so it can compare that date with the current date, and say, if that's true, then give us this dash new to add on to the end, right? Otherwise, if it's not true, we'll just have an empty string and it won't add anything at all. So now we can return everything we want. So I'm going to say name plus new text. And then I'm going to add on a new line symbol. And then add the description. Description plus I'll do a pipe and a $sign before the price, just like that. Okay, so this entire thing is being concatenated together, and these don't really have to be all on, they don't have to be on two lines. So yeah, so the name plus this new text, we are deciding here what the value should be, and then on the next line it'll have a description with a pipe and the price with a $sign. Okay. So let's test that out. We'll go back over to main, and we'll run this again. We already have it set up to automatically call the toString method just by virtue of trying to print the object. Okay, so now let me make this a little bigger here. Yeah, there we go. So now we see this whole thing right here. Pepperoni pizza, new, the classic slice, hot and delicious, and it says $7.39. So there's the result of being able to override that toString so that it automatically prints this nice formatted thing with the information instead of the location in memory, which is kind of cryptic and has no details whatsoever. Okay, so now we're ready to, let's go ahead and we're going to come back and do this custom equals method. I'd like to go ahead and go over to the menu and work on this a little bit. So let's take a look at first the custom toString method here. Let's go, well, yeah, let's do that first, and then we'll go back and do the add and remove. Because we'll just go ahead and code them all and then we'll test them all. How's that? Okay, so I'm going to start with that override annotation again and say public string toString. And then if you watched my lecture, you will remember that I covered this idea of using the string builder class in order to loop through multiple items, because we're really working with an array list of multiple items, menu items, right? So we need to kind of loop through, and what I'd like to do here is to group them by category. So I'm actually going to use this 3 times. So I'm going to use the string builder class. And first I'm going to start with the appetizers. So I'm going to say, let's start this object of the string builder class that's called appetizers. I'm going to loop through each menu item in the menu items. And then while I'm going to say if item.get category. So we're going to go get that category using the getter. And if that string equals appetizer, then we want to take our appetizer string builder object here and append a couple of things. First, I'm going to append a new line, and then I'm going to append the item.toString. So we're explicitly calling that toString method we wrote for the menu item, that's going to have the name and the category and the description and all of that. And then after that's been appended, the last thing I want to append is another new line. So I'm going to kind of, put some space around it. That's why I'm doing this. And you can just chain these appends all together, and it'll take care of it all in one line to build the string with multiple bits. And then, but it'll only add it if it's an appetizer. So we've done that. Now let's do the same exact thing, but we want to do it for the main courses. And so I'll change this to main courses, and we're going to check for main course to be the category. And if so, we'll add that item. And then for the third one, we'll do the desserts. So check to see if it's dessert. And if so, desserts is the string builder object we want to add. Okay, so now we have 3 string builders. We've got desserts, main courses, and appetizers. So what are we going to do with them? This is where we actually are returning how, the final product, what we want to return. So I'm going to say return, and I'm going to start this string by putting a space and say, Tony's pizza menu, and then have another new line character in there. And then I'm going to say appetizers. I'm going to put this like as a header, right? And then I'll add appetizers.toString. So this is where I actually don't need to put the toString on there because I'm concatenating, so it'll automatically call it, but you can add it explicitly if you want to. I'll do that just, because you do have to remember that a string builder object will have to be, turned back into a string. But concatenation will automate that. So I really don't have to add the toString. And then I can put another new line and then do the same thing with main courses. I'll do main courses toString, and then plus the new line. And then the last one, of course, will be desserts. And when I get done with this, we'll test this in a minute, and when we create a menu and add some things to it, and then you'll see how it looks. Okay, before we can test this, we do need to have a way to add items to the menu items array list at the top. So let's do this real quick, and then we'll create a menu. We'll add some menu items to it from these menu items that we created up here, and then we will test out the toString. Okay, so in order to add an item, we are just going to be updating the array list. So this doesn't return anything. I'm just going to give it a return type of void because it's not returning anything at all. And we're going to pass it a menu item and call it new item, and say, this is the item we want you to add to the array list. So I'm getting ahead of myself. We're going to do the bonus mission a little bit later. So let me just do this. It's going to be real straightforward at first. Menu items, and we're just going to add, that's an array list method add, new item. And then the second thing we need to do here is to make sure to update last updated, because if we're adding something to menu, that means the menu is being updated. So this is where we can set, last updated to be local date.now and give it today's date, since we're, changing it. So that's all we'll do for now. When we get back to the bonus mission and want to prevent the addition of duplicates, we'll need to do a little more work to this, but this should work for now. And then, of course, removing an item will be fairly similar. Again, it's void because it's not going to return anything, but it's just going to take care of something for us. And it's same thing, it's a menu item type item. And then we're going to say menu items dot remove. So remove is the opposite of add. It's a built-in array list method that allows you to just give it the item object. It goes and it finds it for you and takes it out. It's real great. You don't have to like look up the index or anything. It does it for you. And then again, we'll update last updated to be local date now. Okay. You know, and if we wanted to make it to where you know, these are, you know, duplicated lines of code, you could create another instance method that was just like, you know, update menu, and it would run this line of code if you want. But since we just have the two places, I'm not worried about it. I'm just going to keep it this way. But if you did it that way, that's totally cool. All right, so we have a way to add, we have a way to remove, and we have a way to print a nicely formatted version of all of the different things, categorized and everything. Okay, so let's go over and do it. All right, so first we'll create a menu, and we can do that very simply, just a regular menu, because it just has a default constructor. We can just say we want a menu to be menu, and it's going to be a new menu. And you just call the constructor just like that. So now we have a menu. It has an array list. The array list is empty, so we need to add some things to it. So let's call our new add item instance method and say menu.add item and give it item 1. And then we can do it again, menu.add item, item 2, and so on and so forth with all 5 items. So we'll do 3, 4, oops, and 5. I don't know if that saved me time or not. And then we can print it here and just say, you know, print menu and test that. And then we can also try to remove an item. So we'll say menu.remove item and give it item 4, say. There we go. And then we'll print the menu again to see what happens after we've done that. Okay, so let's go ahead and run this. And here we go. I'm going to make this a little bigger here. Okay, so we started out Tony's Pizza menu, appetizers. I'm kind of wishing I'd put a space after this now. That's okay. Appetizers, toasted ravioli, and it, you know, gives us the information. Hot garlic breadsticks gives us the information. Then we have our main courses section with pepperoni pizza and veggie pizza, and then we have our desserts. So you can see how we were able to make use of the two-string method for each individual menu item within the two-string method that produced this entire thing. It went through and found all the appetizers, it went through and found all the main courses, and we used that string builder class to be able to iterate through and add it, you know, a little bit at a time to these objects, and then put it all together into one big thing to return from toString. Okay. Then we removed item 4, and so now, you know, we no longer have the veggie pizza. We just have the pepperoni pizza in the main courses section. Great. Okay, so we're moving along. Let's go talk about these. I need to close this. Here we go. Let's go talk about these equals methods. So this is where we want to be able to tell whether something is the same as something else. So you want to be able to compare a menu item. Let's define this custom equals method so that it's not basing it on the location in memory as the basis on which it, you know, determines it to be equal or not. So I'm going to start with override, the annotation, and then I'm going to say public and Boolean because your equals method always returns true or false, and equals. And then I'm going to give it the parameter to be compared, and this represents the thing we're passing in to compare to the first object. So first we'll do our reference check and say, you know, if this particular object that we are in right now is the same as to be compared, if they are in fact the same thing in memory, then just return true. And then we'll do our null check. If to be compared is null, then we can return false because clearly they're not the same object if it's null. And then we can do our class check to see, so we're gonna call get class for this item. And then say if that's not equal to be compared dot get class, then return false. Now we've ruled out some of the like super obvious things. But once we've done that and we're sure that it is the same class, we will go ahead and cast it to the class and just say, menu item, other item. So we're, it's not this item, it's the other item that is to be compared. And we're casting it to menu item to be compared. Okay. So we're setting this value in, but casting it to menu item. And now we're going to work with other item for the purpose of being able to access, the particular properties of it that do in fact belong to this class. So all I really want to do in this case, I'm just going to do it based on the name. So I'm just going to say return this dot name equals, it's a string. So we're going to use equals other item dot get name. Something that I do want to clarify here. This dot equals is on the name specifically, which is just a regular string. So it has nothing to do with this equals that we're defining to compare this entire menu item object. Okay. But strings are also objects and they have their own equals methods. So this is just basically saying it's a primitive. String is an object, but it's going to automatically compare the content, the actual string name against the other one. So there we go. So we have, we'll return whether this is true or false, and that'll give us a quality based on whether the name is the same. Now, you could say, what if you had like, two menu items that were like, chicken tenders, and one was an appetizer and one was a thing, then maybe if you were going to get into that kind of next level of complexity, sure, you might want to base it on something more than just name, but I'm just going to do it based on name for now. So if that's all I'm doing, then we can go ahead and test it. So let's go back over to main and say we're going to test the equals method. So the only thing I really want to do here is to create another object that we can use that actually we don't even have to do that. We can test it. We can test it two items that already exist if we'd like. We could just say, let's print the result of saying item 1 equals item 2. And I'm silly because I should be putting this in parentheses. There we go. And then I need one more. There we go. And then if we wanted to test it with, an additional, we could create, menu item, item 6. And let's say we go ahead and give it, the exact same value as item 5, even though it's going to have like the same, details, right? And even the description and all that stuff doesn't have to be the same. It's only going to check it based on the name. But then we could do it again and say, let's print the outcome of item 5 equals item 6 and see what happens. Okay, so let's run this. All right, so item 1 and item 2 are false. They have two different names, but item 5 and item 6 are considered true because even though they're not the same thing in memory, they do in fact have the same name, and that's the basis that we defined our logic for comparing them to determine whether they're equal or not, is just based on this name. Okay, so that's all we really needed to do for that. So now let's talk about this bonus mission. We want to attempt to add a duplicate item, which, we have one right here that already exists, so we can work with that. And then print the menu to confirm it wasn't added. So we will try, adding it. So I could right now say, menu.add item, and then give it item 6. Okay, if we do that right now, oh, and then I'm sorry, I said I needed to print it, didn't I? So let's go ahead and put the print in here because we'll just print menu so that we'll have it. And then we can see that now in the appetizer section, I've got toasted ravioli, garlic breadsticks, and garlic breadsticks. So this is what we want to prevent. We want to make sure that that's not going to happen. So we're going to come over back to the menu item class and come down to the menu class and come down to add item here. And we're going to prevent the duplicates. So we can certainly, have like, does it already contain it? And if it already contains the exact one, we would want to, say that it already exists. But we also are going to want to go through and check and see if we have created a duplicate like we did with item 6. So it's kind of two different things. So let's do the first one that's kind of obvious before we add anything. So we don't want to do any of this until we have verified that it's not the same thing. So first I'm just going to go to menu items and say, if menu item contains the new item, then let's print some sort of message. And actually, I'm going to use this message again. So let's create it here, string message, and say that item has already been added to the menu. And then I can just say, if we try to do that and then we already added that exact object, then we can just say, oops, you already added that one. And then we want to do an early return. So I'm just going to say return like that so that it does not go down and do this. Then we'll have a second way of doing this and say for, and then we're going to go through each item in the menu and compare it one at a time using our equals method. So if item equals, and then we'll give it the new item. So by comparing each item in the list. And this is where, this looks now a little similar. We're just going to print that message and return early to exit. But if it passes through these and those, that logic is always false, so it never returns early, then it will come down here, it will add it, and it will update the menu. All right, let's try it out. I'm gonna come back over to main. We've already got everything we need here, so let's run it and see what happens this time. Okay, so false, true, and it says that item has already been added to the menu. So it stopped it, and then we can confirm it by seeing that in the appetizer section, we only have garlic breadsticks once. So it definitely stopped and, didn't add it. And we could try to do the same thing, to test the other one. We could say, what if we tried to add menu.add item and we go back and try to add item 1 again, right? We can run that and we should get the same result. I'm having trouble getting a hold of this. Hang on. There we go. Yeah, that item has already been added to the menu. And then the second time that item has already been added to the menu. And we only see, each item exactly once, except for the one we removed earlier. So there you go. So I hope this has been helpful. This is just one of many ways that you may have gone about this. There are a lot of different ways to think through how to meet the requirements that the owner had for this menu. It's good to kind of think things through in different ways and to compare what one person did versus another. So certainly talk this over with your classmates and see how other people decided to solve it. Because you can learn a lot from each other. I'm sure I could learn from you. So I hope this has been helpful, and I will see you in the next one.